Google that. What day did it snow this past week? Do you remember?
Tuesday.
Tuesday? Okay, thank you. I was inspired by the snow, as I always am, and that's why the sermon is called what it is. Snow. I'm always, I can remember growing up, and I'm a Minnesota boy, so whenever it snowed, my folks, they kind of got a little bit distressed, because my dad was a truck driver. He had to drive through it, so, and as an adult, I understand, man, it's 3 times as much work when you're driving on the slippery road. And my mom didn't like it because she had, all she saw was shoveling sidewalks, which we did anyway, so I don't know why that perplexed her. But I think she worried about my dad. That's what it was. It was a worry kind of a thing. But still to this day, I don't anticipate tons of things because I've learned if I anticipate them, they usually don't even happen. So that's also part of worry. But even the good stuff that's going to happen, I don't anticipate it. So I'm not disappointed. But one thing I do anticipate is when there's a good storm. I love rainstorms, and I also love snowstorms. So sometimes I feel like a 9-year-old kid all over again when it snows. Snow is beautiful. Every snowstorm, even though the ice crystallizes around a particle of dust, every snowstorm, I eat the snow. It's what's gonna make me live so long. By the way, you're still invited to my funeral. I do not eat yellow snow. I learned that a long time ago, even though yellow is my favorite color. But snow is an amazing, amazing thing. Parents don't like rain or snow. I've never seen a kid who didn't like a good mud puddle. If they see a puddle, it is instinctive with children. They want to step right in the middle of it. And so, and sometimes so do I. But snow opens up a whole number of possibilities. By the way, as an adult, I like snow now because I don't have to shovel very much. I do the snowblower thing, and mine snowblower is yellow. It's my favorite color. It's a Cub Cadet. It's 2-stage, and I'm always the first one out there to remove the snow in my neighborhood. If I'm not out there, sometimes the neighbor thinks there's something wrong. It is powerful. It is amazing. Snow's amazing. It is amazing stuff. Makes the landscape. It covers a multitude of sin as well. It makes everything look pristine. Now, most people don't like dirty snow, and that snert. I met a guy this morning who never heard of snert before. That the wind-driven snow that's mixed with the dirt. Snert. You California people know about that? Snert? Well, there you go. You're learning something today. Snert. It's a Midwest thing. The wind-driven snow. That's why it always kind of makes me laugh. Here's the wind-driven snow. That's dirty. That is dirty. Yeah. It's always how I like my girlfriends. Pure as the wind-driven snow. Oh, great. I'm recording this. Okay. By the way, snow is in the Bible. Snow is in the Bible, so let me read that quick scripture for you. It's Psalm 147. He sends his command to the earth. By his word, it runs swiftly. He spreads the snow like wool and scatters the frost like ashes. And the frost this morning was an amazing thing. The trees, when I got down to Plattsmouth and even in the grass, all of a sudden it was sparkly. I'm surprised that I can still be surprised. What an amazing thing snow is. It does make me feel like a kid. And so Matthew, the 18th chapter, is also what I think about with snow. This is the words of Jesus. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child and he had him stand among them. And he said, "I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes this little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones to believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea." I like that scripture. Well, not the millstone part, but I do like, and it's always been a little bit confounding for me too. Jesus says, unless you're like this kid, I can't say what I want to say, but unless you're like this kid, you're not entering the kingdom of heaven. And I've always wondered what that is. I know what the traditional answer is, but it's in the context. It's in the context of the disciples wondering who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. We have another instance where there are people who ask Jesus, "Hey, can I be on the right hand, on your right hand?" This seems to have been a continuing conversation by the disciples about the pecking order in the coming kingdom. Power. It's always a very addictive, seductive thing. And it was for the disciples too. They're a product of their own culture. They were taught to believe that with power comes privileges. And so they wanted to be the top dog. It was a natural part of who they are. So they're wondering about this. Jesus calls this child in their midst, and he says, "Unless you humble yourselves like this child, you'll not enter the kingdom of heaven." So the traditional answer, and there's always interpretation, even sometimes in the very straightforward things seemingly that Jesus says, "Unless you humble yourselves." Well, what does that mean? Because that's the traditional answer. Unless we have the humility of children, we will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, I don't know about you, but the kids, when I was growing up, and also the kids that I've reared and been around, and I've been in a lot of schools simply because of what I do, kids are anything but humble. They want to draw the best picture. They want to run faster than anyone else in the class. They want to have an A. They compete, and they want to be famous now. They want to be famous for not even doing anything. They all think that they're going to go into the NBA or the NFL, and I don't call that humility. I call that ambition, which is not a bad thing to have. When our kids do self-talk and we hear them do it, when they make a mistake and they say something like, "Oh, I'm so stupid." I don't know about you, but I jumped on that. And I do that with my grandkids. You're not stupid. You're not stupid. You made a mistake. There's a big difference. So most of the kids that I know are not humble. So it doesn't quite make sense to me. Second interpretation is Jesus saying we need to be dependent like this child is. Dependent. Again, most of the kids that I've ever been around and still are around, they don't want to be reminded that their parents provide every single thing that they have. They don't want to be reminded that technically they don't own anything. It's all their parents. They don't want to be reminded that they are dependent on their folks. just take for granted what parents do, just like many adults do. We take for granted many things that are given to us in life. So I don't know about the dependence thing. Next interpretation is trust. We need to have the trust of this child. We need to trust God the way this child trusts. And again, I don't know if it's just me, but kids are dependent and they trust their folks, but that's what mom and dad are supposed to do. They're supposed to keep the laundry clean. They're supposed to feed us. They're supposed to do these things. And so it isn't so much as a piece of trust in their life, that's the way the world is supposed to be. And it isn't even a trust issue. That's the way the world is. That's the way the world is supposed to be. And also, I don't know about you, how trusting are kids really? There's a degree of trust, but yeah, Dad, thanks for telling me to go to bed so I can grow up big and strong, just like you, because I know I need my sleep. Thanks for reminding me. Or eat your vegetables that are tasteless little pieces of vegetable. Thanks for reminding me to eat those, Dad, because I really know that you know best and the outcome is going to be good. Most of the kids that I've been around, they complain about those sorts of things. They even question. And in my mind, I kind of want the kids to question things. I've always wanted to do that. Got in trouble for it a lot. But I never really minded when my kids questioned about something I said, because then it led to a conversation. So I admit that we do need a degree of humility, and we do need to be dependent on God and realize that we are. We do need to trust God as adult human beings, as people of faith. But I think, at least for me, that is not sufficient. I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like this little child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So, that's when my mind jumps back to snow. Kids look at the snow as fun. Most adults look at the snow as simply trouble. Kids look at rain as fun. I mean, they love to get wet. They don't mind if they get wet. They intentionally go get wet. Adults look at rain as, gosh, I don't want to get wet. I don't want to get spots on my car. I don't want to ruin my shoes. There's a whole different litany of things, the way that we look at the world. Kids collect butterflies and seashells. They collect stones and stamps and coins, and they make beautiful things out of them, and most adults lose that ability. We clip coupons so we can save money. We don't even do that anymore. For crying out loud, I clip digital coupons. That's not clipping. That is point and click, I suppose, but that's not clipping. Our children simply can have fun in the most simple of things. And I kind of think, in my humble opinion, and this is opinion, that's what Jesus was getting at. Jesus looked at the people who were around him, and he calls this child into their midst, because the question was, what's the pecking order? How can I be the most powerful? How can I have the most prestige? And Jesus is basically saying, that's a stupid question. I wish teachers would say that. I've always thought, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Well, we know in the back of our mind that there is. especially when the teacher said it 3 or 4 times, and then the kid asks a question, something that the teacher has just said. But I believe Jesus was saying we need to have the eyes of a child. And for lots of children's lives, so we know how to have fun. I think Jesus was a fun dude. If there would have been football around, Jesus would have been playing touch football with the kids. Jesus always had his disciples around him. And so we don't see very many pictures of this, but they saw themselves as the gatekeepers to Jesus. We see it in some of the miracles, some of the people who were coming to him. They were trying to protect Jesus from these untouchables. Jesus always said, let them come to me. Jesus said that to the kids too. They were attracted to Jesus because I think Jesus was a fun guy. The late Elton Trueblood wrote a book, and that's all the book was about. The teachings of Jesus, where there are at least 30 instances that he says where when Jesus was teaching and speaking and interacting, the people of the day would have understood his words to be funny, or a play on words, or a surprise, a joke. Half of humor is surprise. He says many teachings of Jesus were just like that. And we've had that sanitized out of us. We don't look at the world with fun in mind. In fact, I was even taught there's a time for work and there's a time for fun, and fun is way down on the list. You get the work done first. I've always had fun when I was working, so I don't know what they were talking about. But even now you say, preacher, there are lots of crappy things that happen to people too. And I know that I know that. There are crappy things. I'll tell you what though, sometimes some of the crappy things that take place in life, even getting out of bed and looking at yourself first thing in the morning with puffy eyes. And then I had a haircut just the other day. The next morning, there was that miracle hair in the middle of my forehead. It grew 2 inches. I said, how does that happen? And I could bemoan that fact, but it made me laugh. It always makes me laugh. Even when I've been crying intensely, and there's been a few times in my life when I have done that, crying intensely. Sometimes, since crying and laughing are kissing cousins, there have been times when I have paused and started laughing because the sound that was coming out of me, it made me laugh. It was such a strange, funny sound. It's depending on how we choose to see things. We can see even the intensity of mourning and grieving. We can see it as a symphony of emotion and love that's coming out of our very soul. Everything is an amazing gift that God has given to us. Some things just don't feel so amazing when we're going through them. Jesus had to be fun to be around. And that's why the children liked him so much. Can we as old fogies ever recover from that? Jesus says we got to. I read these words, and the author says, I want to go back to the time when decisions were made by going eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and depending on what part of the country you were from, there were other things added to that. For us, it was a tiger. Mistakes were corrected by simply exclaiming, do-over. Race issue meant arguing about who ran the fastest. Money issues were handled by whoever was the banker in Monopoly. I had a certain brother we never let be the banker because bankers are very sneaky in Monopoly. Being old referred to anyone who is over 20 years old. The worst thing you could catch from the opposite sex was cooties. I still think that's a possibility. Having a weapon in school meant being caught with a slingshot. And oh, I miss my slingshots. Taking drugs meant orange-flavored chewable aspirin. Still one of my favorite flavors on all the earth. Ice cream was considered a basic food group. Still is. Nobody was prettier than Mom. And getting a foot of snow was a dream come true. One doesn't normally expect a lesson from snow, but I've learned many good ones from snow. Why can't we all become 9-year-olds again? Why? Because Jesus said, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become as a little child, 9-year-olds in my mind, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.